So we get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshini Bhagavati Ashtadashadhyayini Ambatva Manusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Rudatuhe Namaha. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapada Kramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyana Vastita Tatkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na vidusura suraganaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Sarvadharman parityajya Mamekam sharanam vraja Aham tva sarva papebhyaha Mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So we have just embarked on the next journey indicating this journey of the next 6 chapters, which focuses on one particular theme. So in the 6th chapter, we saw that, how as the method to reach self-realization was given to us, which was starting with, concentration and then meditation. But then it concluded with Lord Krishna telling us that, among all the people who practice meditation, who do meditation, and who also recognize that our ultimate goal is to realize my true nature, among all these people, he actually talked about the fact that I think there is one particular type of people who are absolutely the best. They are the noblest. And so, he gave, before getting to that noblest person, he, in our mind, will be thinking, oh, I think people who do absolutely selfless work, they are the best. Or the person who focuses only on knowledge, that person is the best. Or maybe the person who does so much amount of tapas, who denies all kinds of, enjoyments for themselves, and, who goes all the way to the Himalayas, lives with only 2 pairs of clothes and, focuses only on what he or she eats, that person is the best, right? No, Krishna says, no, there is somebody even better. All that is definitely necessary. We all need to do those 3 things. So, we got to be a tapasvi, we got to be a jnani, we got to be a karmi, a selfless worker. But among all this, there is one person who is absolutely the best. the noblest. And so Krishna says, that person who's the best is the person who has completely merged with me, completely merged with me, completely who has absolutely no sense of that person's identity itself, and who recognizes that it is just me who is everywhere. So, it is with that note that the sixth chapter had ended. So he really literally brings that person to a state where the person can actually merge himself or herself at the absolute mind level into that pure consciousness. And this is the highest point of the meditation, that single pointed meditation that Krishna says, and that he says, such a person is the dearest and the highest, is the best. So naturally, there is this doubt in all our minds. I want to be the best. And Arjuna, being a very kind of an aggressive, ambitious person, he also wants to be the best. But in the 6 chapters, he has recognized that, there are some things that is almost impossible to achieve. And he recognizes this fact that so long, I have been thinking of myself as this, very, very limited person with this particular body who occupies this much amount of space in this whole universe and who weighs so much, but this entire earth is so big and everything. How can such a person who is so finite, who is so limited, how can such a person be able to completely dissolve a person's identity and merge herself or himself to that absolute complete, complete infinity? How is that possible? This infinity, which is so limitless. I mean, if I look out of my window, it just, there doesn't seem to be an end. It is just totally limitless. How can I be part of this whole thing, right? So that's the part that now we are getting into, So just a simple picture, just to show that, we look at ourselves, for example, as just individuals here. So the question is, how can I connect myself, not only with each one of us, but then I connect myself to this huge, big picture of this world here, where I know that in this big picture, there is so much going on there. On one hand, I get a lot of joy out of things that I do, my actions, my ambitions, my goals and everything. But then there is also other things that's going on in this world. There's so much amount of things that I'm not able to bear with, possibly deaths in a family or, financial crisis, not only individually, but whole in the world itself. And all this time, all this thing is happening out here. And in and through everything that happens, whether it's my customers giving me problems or my boss giving me problems, or at home, my children giving me, things that I need to think about, or, my colleagues are jealous of me, all these kind of things that happens, including my own husband who is not doing his share of work, all this is happening in this world. How can I really connect myself to this world, first of all? And after even connection of this, give up that whole connection of me with this world. And you're telling me, Arjuna is telling Krishna, how do you think that's even possible? Because I'm just having some pictures here to show you, whether it's the football stadium in UFM where there's 20,000 people, or you see this crowded streets of Mumbai where people are just getting into trains, or whether it's an individual thing. In all these places, I see that it's extremely hard for somebody like me to connect with people, and then beyond that, to connect with this entire universe, which I see which goes on and on and on beyond, the Mars and everything that Elon Musk is working on going, or, all this, beyond this, there is something which is even beyond. That's the challenge. And that's the challenge that Arjuna is asking Krishna. So in order to see how this can do, so I just thought, let me put one or two more pictures on how this whole thing can think, when we can think about this connection itself. And this is, I'm relying on Gurudev's example of, which I heard long time back, on this, this beautiful carpet. We all have some form of rugs or carpets in our house, and we go to the market, we buy this because we find it so beautifully laid out. It's, all kinds of designs on it. There's different colors, the threads are of different colors, everything. And, and now let's look at another carpet where actually we see sort of a miniature world, if you will, we see these animals, we see some form of people, all this, we see it. But then what happens is our mind gets fixated only to all these patterns. And we just, we think that that's what is making it beautiful. But if you look closely, what is out there is nothing but a thread. It's a thread which is going through entire carpet. And that thread is now in different colors and is positioned differently in order to give you this effect of this beautiful carpet. So in and through everything actually is nothing but that thread. Now imagine if, each of these threads, like this animal thinks about, okay, I don't want to be part of this carpet. I want to just walk away. What will happen? The carpet is going to just totally fall apart, right? So we have to think about ourselves in that sense is, I'm not each one of these individual things that I'm thinking of. I'm actually the thread that is connecting it. The thread which is in and through this whole, whether it's the animals, whether it's the patterns, whether it's, when I think about, when I showed this picture of all these people, in and through that, I'm not this individual people, I'm the one which is common to everything. What is that commonality? It is that commonality that connects each one of us. And that's the part that we will see in the 7th chapter, which is so beautifully brought out, that in and through everything, whether it is the fire, whether it is water, whether it is, if I take the phone, whether I take my glasses, everything, there are two aspects to it. One aspect is the essence of it. Like, for example, if it is fire, it is the heat and the light, which is the essence, but the shape of the fire and the flames, that is just a form of it. So too, water in Coke, water in juice, everything, ultimately it's nothing but water, but that gives form to the juice and everything. So this is where 7th chapter goes into a lot of details about helping us understand what is really the essence and what is the other form. So this is, so it goes into beautifully about talking about the lower nature and the higher nature of this whole cosmos, if you will. And I'll introduce more factors a little later. So we were introduced to this concept of Tat Tvam Asi. Now, when you have heard this before as a Mahavakya, you would have thought, okay, that I am, or that you are. Okay, that sounds great, but what does it exactly mean to me? And this is where I was trying to make this connection here with, first of all, I need to understand, all this time, I have been looking at this individual self of mine as this part of it, Now, the aspect of connection of this to not just this universe, which is called, we call it as Jagat, but to going even beyond that and seeing that we are all nothing but this one. So that part of it is what we are slowly getting into in this area. So far with Tvam, in the 6 chapters, we saw that there were essentially, in the 6 chapters, there were 3 main topics that came out. One is completely this aspect of who I am as Jiva. That was really brought out. And we saw that this Jiva is not just this body that I'm showing here. In fact, this jiva is not even the mind. It is not even all the sense organs that I'm looking at, but it is something else. It's beyond this aspect of who I am. We have so far been so ingrained in thinking. All this, we looked at it. We even did this Panchakosha Viveka. We call this Panchakosha Viveka, meaning this 5 layers of the body, starting with this Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha. Even though the names as such was not described, but then it was shown in different ways with this Indriyani Paranya, who in the, Param Manaha, Manasastu Para Buddhihi, De Paratastu Saha. In 3rd chapter, Shloka 42, we had talked about it. And then in the 4th chapter also, that aspect of this Chaitanya or this consciousness was brought about in the 4th chapter, where this Akarta, Abhokta, those terminologies were brought out. So all this kind of, it was a lead on to this next set of 6 chapters. But just to give you an idea, that was one aspect of the Jiva Swarupa was brought out. Then we talked about the second aspect, which was a Karma Yoga aspect of it, to indicate that when I am consider myself as a Jiva, then what is my sadhana? How do I really get out of this Jivatvam? Is through actually looking at every action that I'm performing in such a way that it is a selfless activity. So this also, we discussed it in the 2nd chapter a lot with that Karmane Vadikaraste. Then in the 4th chapter, Brahmanya Dhaya Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Karoti Lipyate Nasapapena Padmapatra Vivam Basa, to show all this aspect of Karma Yoga. Then the Karma Phala was talked about. So that was the second major aspect in the 6 chapters. Then the third aspect we talked about also is ultimately it is you. You are responsible for your own life. So the importance of self-effort, we discussed a lot, which is then, basically indicating that the free will, which is extremely important. So this, karma is not a fatalistic theory. I cannot just say, oh, it's my karma that I'm going through this, or it's my prarabdha that I'm going through it. Yes, prarabdha is responsible for what I'm going through, but how I'm going through. How I'm going through is the purushartha, the effort that I'm putting in to do it. So that aspect of it was also very beautifully brought out. So 3 factors: the aspect of who I am as a person, second thing is karma yoga, and the third part is about the importance of individual effort in my journey towards self-realization. So all this was talked about in the first 6 chapters. And finally, with this, in 6th chapter, with this Uddared Atmanatmanam Atmanam Avasadyet, he really tells you about how, ultimately I have to be extremely alert and agile in how and what I think and how I'm taking those thoughts into habits. And all this is what finally decides my own destiny. It's not my karma. It's actually on this combination of what I came up with, which is my Purusha Prarabdha, including my Purushartha, is where ultimately it leads to my destiny. So that is where we finished with the 6th chapter. So then, Krishna, as I said, Arjuna had this question about if you said that the noblest of all these bhaktas is the one who merges his identity with the infinity. Arjuna's question was, how is that possible? Tell me more about it. So that's why in the 7th chapter, you see Krishna introducing both the theoretical. He gives you a lot of theory in the beginning about this whole tat aspect of it. Like I gave you these examples of the essence of water or the essence of fire, all that. So he starts to break down what we think this world is. We look at this world as, again, so many figures, so many individual type of forms, shapes, functions. So you see Krishna really breaking that up into this aspect of it. So he gives you the theoretical aspects. He also speculation, because again, the beauty of Sanatana Dharma is you actually get to experience what you are not seeing. That's the big difference between sometimes a Western philosophy and an Eastern philosophy. Is Eastern philosophy goes into this aspect of you have to infer a lot, and when you have the shraddha on placing on this inference that you do, then you get to see what you did not see before. So that's a speculative aspect of it. And truly in Bhagavad Gita, you see this masterpiece of how this philosophy is brought in. So, 7th chapter, what does it, just to give you a kind of a summary of what and how it takes you, is that, Arjuna's question, which was about meditation, Krishna elaborates a lot of it. But then the question that also Krishna really didn't speak about much is on what you meditate on. And that's why he comes to this aspect here. And before he talks about on who he has to meditate on, which is before he describes who really this Ishvara is, he gives this theoretical knowledge, which we call as Jnanam. And then he gives them Vijnanam. Vijnanam, which is wisdom, which is something which, after having understood what it is, how does it play out? What is the, which that aspect which I have now understood, how can that be really, what should I say, how do I really experience it? So for that, you see Krishna explaining about this aspect of Ishvara, which is the lower and the higher. The lower form of Ishvara is actually what you see in the form of the forms, saguna, the saguna aspect of it. Saguna meaning that which has the guna or the properties, you can say. So the lower nature, which comprises of the physical body, the mind, the ego, the intellect, he talks about all that. And then the higher form, which is the one which gives you the life-giving force, if you want to say that way. To keep it simpler, what is it that makes me talk? What is it that makes me see? That life-giving force, he talks about that as the higher aspect of Ishvara. So the lower nature, which is the forms and everything, and the higher nature, which is the life-giving force itself. He talks about all this. And then he shows about how, the origin and the cause of the universe, how this particular life force actually pervades this entire world. And he gives this beautiful thing, which is Sutre Mani Gana Iva, just like how the thread pervades through every bead in a necklace. So too, this consciousness principle pervades through this entire world. And he talks about this as, when I think about the Mother Earth, this Mother Earth is, where does that fragrance of earth come from? What is the isness of earth? What is the brightness of fire? So all this, he talks about it. And then he also explains, why am I not able to focus upon that essence? What keeps me from really understanding that Ishvara principle? So he talks a lot about there on this Maya aspect. Actually doesn't go too deep into it, but he explains, that the reason why I'm not able to access that thing is because of Maya. And then what is Maya? Maya is nothing but, it is Trigunatmika. Way back in Tattva Bodh, he gives this idea, this aspect of, Maya is nothing but Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, where Sattva represents everything that is most beautiful, which is peace, which is harmony. So he talks about that. Then he talks about Rajas, where Rajas represents a lot of action, and then Tamas, which is the inertia. So all these three factors, So sattva, rajas, tamas is there in the universe. And maybe I'll open it up now to ask you on, if you look at the world, can you tell me where you can see these three gunas? Where do you see tamas, for example? Because I explained about how Ishvara, it is just nothing but it is that Ishvara, which is in his lower form are the forms of the whole world, of everything that you see. So where do I see the tamas?
In the animals, we see tamas.
Animals, well, what aspect of the animals? What aspect of the animals you would say?
Working class, I think.
Which are like laziness or not
okay.
moving, or the characteristics like, I mean, again, tamas can be seen in, many places, including humans.
Correct. Exactly. So tamas you can see there. Where else? Amma wanted to say something.
Laborers.
Laborers. Okay.
Laborers.
Okay. Now, right. Now let me explain also. There are about 84 million species, right, in the whole world. Now, both of you are focusing on the one aspect of it. One how do I say 0.001% of the whole world, but there is a lot more of tamas. So think about when we say the whole world. What about all these rocks? The rocks are very tamas. Rocks are tamas too, right? So
Right.
You were focusing on just the human being and the qualities and comparing it to animals, the quality aspect of it. But we can also look at even beyond that. So that is where I was saying, all the rocks, the mountains, all those are tamas, right? But then at the quality level, yes, procrastination, laziness, all that is at the mind level, that is also tamas. Now, rajas, where would you look for rajas?
Action, people who are very active.
Correct.
And who plan and work towards it.
So that is again at the human being level. But let's even think about any movement, in the whole world. We are looking at the world, which is, like I said, the animals and the birds and ants and all that, which are living beings. But we also have this other aspect. So the movement is rajas. When the wind is moving or when there is a high winds or whatever, all that is rajas. So rajas basically represents action. Tamas represents inertia, something which is not moving, So something which is not moving is tamas. Something which is moving is rajas. And then sattva is a quality which brings that peace and harmony and everything. So we have, if you look at the entire universe, these are the three forces or energies which really creates this whole universe. What happens for us is we get so stuck with these aspects of the universe. And this whole thing is like a movie which is being played out. Okay. And we all are actually part of this whole movie. And we get so stuck in our own interactions with people and with this various aspects of the world. Like, for example, when I say tamas is inertia and everything, I get so stuck in buying my next iPhone or something like that, right? Because this is just an object. This is actually tamas. In matter of fact, all objects are nothing but tamas. And we get so caught up by the glamour and the functionality or everything that is associated with all these objects, even house, everything, or even when I look at a relationship only by my attraction to the relationship because somebody is very beautiful or handsome or anything, by the physical shapes or whatever, that is again tamas. So we are actually in the state of, like I said, in a kind of, we are all part of a movie where I'm getting stuck, or I'm allowing my mind to get only attracted to these kind of tamas aspect of it. Now, what Krishna is saying is, all that is only my lower nature. And I need to graduate by getting out of being attracted only to this tamasic aspect and go a little, maybe focus myself more on a rajasic aspect of myself, and then sattva. If I can go directly to sattva and go even beyond sattva, that is the part where you see Krishna telling Arjuna that you need to get even beyond sattva to me and merge yourself with me. That is what he said in the end of the 6th chapter. And here you will see in the 7th chapter, you see Krishna actually telling how all these 3 forces are part of this Maya which is an illusion, this Maya which is making me think that, which is making me do all these things. So you see Krishna telling Arjuna that only by totally surrendering myself to that absolute nature of Ishvara, that essence which is behind this, the higher nature, can I actually cross over this Maya or this movie which I'm acting on. I need to think about myself that I'm only an actor. That's where he goes to. And here you will see in this 7th chapter, he will talk about the different categories of people, starting with how we are the kind of people who get attracted to all these tamasic things. And in this tamasic aspect, we get sometimes so bogged down into it that we tend to perform actions which hurts other people. And so the idea is that I need to get out of it and then get to a state where I'm slowly starting to recognize my connection and I start to do good things. So he then talks about, how there are 4 types of people. He, after explaining this Ishvara principle, then he starts to talk about 4 types of people. The one type of people is the people who are just in the world, only working for the sake of money, which again, money is so tamasic aspect. So he explains about, that is one type of people. Then the second type of people who are then sort of, striving towards getting out of it. And then the third type of person who's really trying to seek liberation, who have understood the falsity of the world, the whole illusory nature of the world, and they are now starting to work hard towards moving ahead. So that's the third type. And finally, the last part of it are the type of people who have already recognized that this world is completely anartha, is only anartha or useless, and they are the wise people. So he talks about all those 4 kinds of people. So you see how beautifully in this 7th chapter, he will explain what is this Ishvara principle. Like I said, the lower nature, the higher nature. And then finally, he slowly brings the student step by step. He explains the different type of people and then shows the evolution of a student from where the person is and how the person can move forward. So that's where he really takes us through about the 4 different type of people. And he calls them, the distressed people, then the inquisitive people, the people who are seekers of liberation, and finally the wise people. So the wise people is the one, he says finally, is the most dearest to me, because the wise people is seeking him, that's Lord Krishna, only for his sake, seeking nothing else. And this is where, if you remember Bhagavatam and everything, how the Gopikas are glorified so much, because the Gopikas, they just wanted Krishna only for the sake of Krishna, nothing else, So he talks about how this, finally, that higher principle of Ishvara is also way beyond this Maya, the three gunas, and it's beyond our mind and senses. It's beyond even something which is not born, which is unborn, which is unchanging. It is beyond even space and time. And it is, it's being there all the time. But why are we not able to recognize that? Because we are bound by our own gunas. As I said, we are bound by the gunas and we are in this Maya. So finally, the chapter, concludes by saying, only those who really want Krishna in his true sense, in that infinite nature. And that is a connection with the 6th chapter. In the 6th chapter, like I said, he talks about how that devotee who wants me for myself, who merges with me, that's how he describes there. But here he explains all this aspect of, why is it difficult, explain the infinite nature. And then he says about only when the person is ready to, who realizes Ishvara in his infinite nature, and who's ready to every moment of the life, keeps that in front, that's the person is, again, the best of all the devotees. And so that's to give you a summary of the 7th chapter. Because we did the 6 chapters, I wanted to give you a kind of a bird's overview of where the 7th chapter is leading you to. So again, you see, because the way it is so beautifully and so logically laid out in Bhagavad Gita, you see the first 3 verses in the beginning. Krishna actually starts the chapter itself. And, having explained who's the Uttama Adhikari in the 6th chapter, he now wants to make sure that he's preparing Arjuna to get to, to start the journey of what does it take to really merge with that infinite. So we see that in this 3 verses. Because you also see how Krishna, he's really happy with how Arjuna has been asking his questions. And he also, is very happy that Arjuna is able to grasp all these concepts. And, as I said, Krishna had laid the foundation. So, he has also explained all the foundation beautifully. And Arjuna is able to, is kind of passed the prerequisites. And he can see that Arjuna is now actually ready to delve deeper into this aspect of infinite nature. So that's where it is. So we will do the first verse today. But before that, any questions or thoughts from anybody?
Thanks for summarizing chapter.
Okay. Yeah. I know normally we summarize at the end, but I wanted to give you that overview before starting. Yeah, go ahead, Jayashri.
You said there was the 4 types of people, one who focus on money, the tamasic one. I couldn't get the second one. I think I missed it.
The second one is a little more evolved. The person is actually sort of recognizing the falsity of the world. The person have basically seen that, okay, I am earning all this money, but it's not really taking me anywhere right now.
Okay.
So that realization aspect of it, that's the second part of the second type of devotee. The third type of devotee is, now the person has recognized that any amount of money, any amount, I can have 2 houses or 3 houses, that still is not going to give me the peace, right? So at that point in time, then what is next? So such a person now really comes to Vedanta, so to speak, Vedanta, in the sense now the person is contemplative, the person is trying to understand life, is studying a lot of books, is thinking through things. So that's the third type of devotee, who is like, convinced, not just convinced, but is also convinced of the knowledge So
Okay.
that's the third type, but is not there yet. The fourth person, but is still striving though. The third level, but type of person is still striving. But the fourth person is 100% convinced, is already living a life of living a life of knowledge. Anything and everything the person sees only the essence. Like for example, if I'm looking at this, just a very simple example. If I have, if I know that the thing that keeps my body going is just, certain it's just a package of, say, I need certain amount of carbohydrates, certain amount of proteins, and certain amount of other minerals or whatever. And I can make this shake every day, and I just keep drinking that shake. I'm not focused on getting the variety that I need or whatever.
Okay.
That is just a very, very simple, basic example I gave you, but I just wanted to give you that idea is now we are totally convinced that all I need is just a carbohydrates, protein in this. I really don't need to have lots of spinach and a lot of this and all that, something like that. Or when you look at a bulb, for example, I know that what makes the bulb work is that electricity that is going through the bulb and making it work. I mean, I do need the whole bulb casing and everything, but I focus on the attention that what is making it work is ultimately the electricity, for example. So I'm focused now on really the underlying principle behind everything that is going on. So now you may ask, what does this do for me? Why should I focus on this underlying principle and not the external stuff? The reason is because today, the way my mind works is I get upset with every small thing that is happening in the world. If the temperature goes too high, like right now, it's really hot in India. If it gets too hot and I say, oh my God, I'm sweating, I can't handle this. But if I recognize that that is the play of nature, so I do what I need to do by not going out too much, because I know that's the nature. I cannot change it. So the acceptance comes in, the gratitude comes in. How does gratitude come in? Because I recognize that at the end of the day, like I just want to give this, yesterday, but right now what is happening is, India has assumed the presidency of the G20 this year. And as part of this G20, there is something called C20, which is called Civil 20. Civil 20 is where there's so much amount of cultural events, so much amount of lectures and everything. And people are made to feel how they're part of a bigger picture. So Chinmay Mission actually has taken up this one category called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. One earth, what is that? Sorry, one earth, one family, one future.
Okay.
Yeah. So this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam Chinmay Mission has taken up, and Chinmay Mission has organized about 15 such seminars all over India. And yesterday, we in Kerala, Chinmay Vishwavidyapeeth, my university, got the opportunity to have a whole seminar on Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam here.
Very good.
It was just, I think you should, if you just put on YouTube, Chinmay Vishwavidyapeeth, you will see such beautiful thoughts and lectures on this aspect of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is, this is in connection with the 7th chapter here today, which is I need to take myself out of who I am individually and focus my attention on the whole world and consider myself as part of this one earth, one family, one future. When I do that, I see how my own problems are so small. It's almost nothing. And in that aspect, there is a beautiful lecture. I mean, it is just mind-boggling, this lecture by this one person called Dr. K.K. Mohammed, who gave this lecture yesterday. The title of his lecture was Reconstruction of Temples in Madhya Pradesh. Okay, that's all it was. But the story that he said and how he achieved it was just absolutely remarkable. I mean, he actually went into a dacoit infested area in Madhya Pradesh, where probably the most dangerous of dacoits were there. And in that area, there was one area there were about maybe like 1,000 small temples, which were totally razed to the ground about 1,000 years ago. Maybe it was some earthquake or we don't know what it was. So he's an archaeologist, and he took piece by piece and constructed about 25 temples, and had lots of challenges. But in and through that, what he did was he built this whole thing, and he actually even involved some of the dacoits in the building of it, So you should see that lecture of his in this segment. I will see if I can send you the link to this part of it. It was, people were in tears after the way he described how he had to, there were like, I don't know, 5,000 pieces maybe on the ground, but taking each piece of it, piece by piece, building the temple and finally showing it was just something. And in and through that, this person, Dr. Muhammad, was quoting all Upanishad mantras, many shlokas from the Puranas, and many Shanti mantras, and giving that reference to it is, and I think you should also, apparently there's a beautiful YouTube interview of his, where he, the interviewer is asking, how come you quote so much from Sanskrit? How did you learn this? Clearly, this is where the prarabdha of the person comes across. He was so fluent in Sanskrit, so fluent in all the Shastras, and how matter of fact, apparently he's the one who came up with this thing of this Ram Mandir. He was the one through archaeology came up with the evidence that it was actually a temple that was there. And because of that, now, this whole Ram Mandir is being built. Anyway, so just probably a long-winded answer to your question here, Jayashree.
A lot. And just this last weekend, the 60 minutes, we saw how the Eiffel Tower, the cathedral was in Paris was, damaged, how they're fixing it piece by piece. They were showing, I'm able to relate what you're saying to me. Like they're taking earbuds and kind of cleaning it and polishing it and gleaming it and all that stuff. So that's what the effort, it takes in Madhya Pradesh to restore everything. So be able to relate to that. Thank you so much, Sunitha.
So this kind of thinking is so very important, this thinking of the fact that I'm not this individual person, I'm actually connected to the world. And even when I'm connected, so that is one level of evolution for us. But the second level of evolution, which what Krishna is talking about here, is when you connect, that he's saying, I have two aspects of myself. One is this lower self, which is this entire world, this entire universe. That whole thing is my lower self. But my higher self is even beyond that, the essence, as I said, giving this example of fire or water. I am that brightness. I am that brightness of the fire. I am that sapidity of water, as you would say. Or I am that electricity in a bulb. That is who I am. So that is the level of evolution where we need to move on.
Thank you, Sunitha.
Yeah. So let's do this just for the first shloka here. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Ata Saptamo Dhyayaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Maya Saktamana Partha. Maya Saktamana Partha. Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah. Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah. Asamshayam samagram mam. Asamshayam samagram mam. Yathajñasyasi tachrunu. Yathajñasyasi tachrunu. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Saktamanav Partha Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yathajñasyasi Tatshrunu. So here, right from the beginning, just like when we write a book or something, we first describe why am I doing this book, So here Krishna is already telling Arjuna, these are, the objectives that I want to give you, Arjuna. So he's saying, what are the main objectives? So he says, Mai asakta manaha. Mai asakta manaha. So he's saying, Arjuna, if you know who I am, if you know my true nature, then your mind will become even more intensely focused on me, and so therefore I need to first make sure that I explain who I am to you very, very well. So Mai asakta manaha. So by knowing my true nature, you will know me even better. You will actually know me so much that you would really totally then surrender yourself to me. That's the 6th chapter end, right? That's what he says, the person who surrenders himself completely to me. So, Mai asakta manaha partha referring to Arjuna. And he says, Yogam yunjan madashrayah. So, that focus by which you will develop when you know who I am, that will allow you to meditate even more upon me. So again, 6th chapter we said is a Vedantic meditation where the meditation is upon the absolute self. But then how would you know there is something called the absolute self, right? So in order to do that, he says, so you will know me when I explain to you who I am, then you will be able to surrender yourself. Madashrayaha. That is, he says, you will find through this knowledge that I am your only ashraya. Ashraya means support or bedrock, you might say, that I am your only support and refuge in life. I'm actually the only one, madashrayaha. There is no other support for you. I mean, today we take support in so many different things. I take support on my iPhone, which is, and I have to bring that up again and again, this iPhone, because not iPhone, phone in general. We have our support on our phone. We are constantly texting. This is becoming such an issue. Like now that I'm part of the university, I can see how for the students, if for 5 minutes, if they don't see the phone, there is a problem. So here you see Krishna is telling Arjuna that I'm not that kind of a support. I am that absolute support. You need that kind of a support and in your life. Only when you recognize that, you will be totally mine at that time. You'll be completely mine. You will totally surrender yourself to me. So this is a very, very important teaching that he says, which Krishna says this. And you can see really, the confidence of Sri Krishna here. That's shown in the 3rd and the 4th lines. You see that, Krishna is so confident about what he's saying. And this is, he wants Arjuna's complete attention here. So how does he do that? He says, asamshayam. He says, there's absolutely no doubt. Asamshayam, your mind will totally get completely clear. Right now, you're not able to focus on me. Right now, your meditation is not that good because your ashraya buddhi is in other things of the world. So you need to get that mind completely away from that ashraya. It may be my work is my ashraya, or my family is my ashraya, my relationships are my ashraya, my house is leaking for some reason, that is my ashraya. So all this is my ashraya. I need you to take that out of that. And asamshayam, totally without any doubt, this has happened. Samagram, asamshayam samagram mam. You'll understand everything about me. Not even a bit I'm going to keep it away from you. I don't have any secrets. And whatever I tell you, that whole knowledge, whatever I'm giving you, will be so comprehensive, so full, without any doubt at all. So that's the kind of knowledge that I'm going to give you. And yatha jnasyasi tat shrunu. Jnasyasi, you will know what is the most important thing for you. And by saying that, what is most important, he's trying to say that, guess what? There's nothing beyond this that you really need to know. This is literally the end of the tunnel, you will get that knowledge, and that you listen. Tat shrunu. Shrunu meaning you listen 100% with complete attention on this. Now, Arjuna, you listen to this. And he's able to say all this because he knows Arjuna is so keen. He's so totally attentive to the whole thing. And this brings out such beautiful, it shows this complete relationship between the teacher and the student. And the teacher is just willing to completely pour out whatever he wants to the student. And he knows that the student will actually totally get it. Tat. And the word tat again refers to that absolute self. So this is that big tat that we also indicates. So in the first 6 chapters, we dealt with etat, this which stands for the individual, but here we're dealing with that which is the absolute self. So with that, we will see what exactly is Krishna trying to say here. Okay. So we'll meet next week and we'll continue. Sarve, yeah, go ahead. Any question?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
You can finish and then I can ask you. Sorry about that.
Sure. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Let me stop the live stream.